get down to basics. Communication. What is it? Answer the question, what is communication? Maddie, you look like you're about to try. Go for it.
Like transferring information between parties.
You mean parties like people, not parties like New Year's, yay, rah, right? Okay, good. It's time for Mr. Clarkson's exceptional artistic abilities. This is party 1. I do like that Maddie uses the word party because I think that that is appropriate. Party 2. Maddie, is that a correct visual representation of your definition? Excellent. Okay, so follow-up question. And Maddie's actually right on track with communication theory that you might study in college. So she's got the basic model of communication. And party 1 would probably be called the sender, and party 2 would be called the receiver. Okay, so sender, receiver, we've got communication. Now, the next question, and I'll ask somebody other than Maddie, what is being transferred? Okay, tell me type of information, because that's still a little bit general. So, Melissa, give me very much more specific. What do you mean by information? Give me a type of information that might be transferred. Okay. So if I am drinking a cup of coffee and I look at you, Melissa, and I say, this coffee is good, that means there's a thought in my head that's a reaction to the coffee saying, this coffee is good, and I transfer it to you verbally. Right? Okay, good. What else might be transferred? Ryan? Okay, data. So something that is maybe not so personal, something that's a little bit more objective, statistics. Excellent. What else? Yes?
I don't know if emotions could also.
Sydney's bringing your attention to something that we now must understand. There is transfer of information that is both direct and intentional, and there is transfer of information that is indirect and sometimes unintentional. In other words, the transfer of information is going to have 2 layers. If you think that information is simply a thought that is transferred without anything else going on, you're not thinking sophisticated enough. So the transfer of information will have many different layers. So Melissa's correct that the transfer of information could be a single thought. But the way in which I transfer that information could also carry an emotional message that maybe I intended, maybe I didn't intend. So there will be layers of meaning. So one transfer of information could actually contain all of this right here. So you must think of information, the information transfer, as being both, well, I'm not going to use direct and indirect. I will use 2 other words that will be more precise. Explicit and implicit. My explicit information transferred about the coffee is the fact that I'm experiencing coffee that tastes good. I'm not quite sure what I might be implying. We could explore that for a little while. Kenzie, would you do me a favor with the door, please? Thank you. Got it? Basic model? Easy enough. Where's communication happening? Talk to me about where these sorts of things happen. Anything and everything. We could fill up this slide and about 30 others with examples. So start giving me some examples. Yeah, Emily. Okay, good. So let's see. And in this classroom, a number of different types of communication happen. So right now what's happening is basically a kind of a lecture. Lecture with a little bit of interaction with students, but basically a lecture. Excellent. So what else? Class lecture is one way. Yeah. So personal conversation in the lunchroom, good. call them out. I'll try to write as fast as you can speak. Emily,
Through technology.
give me one example, because that's many and varied. Give me one example, because that's many and varied.
Email.
Email, good. Email, texts, Facebook, dinner parties. Ooh, like formal dinner parties with the jackets and everything? I love those. Okay. Actually joking, I've never been to one in my life. The day I'm invited to a dinner party where I would actually have to wear a jacket and tie as a requirement, I don't know what I would do. I'd fall over. Give me more. Ryan, you had your hand up. You going to say some of those? Okay, Melissa.
Like your house is home.
Okay, so family conversation. We've got verbal and mediated through technology. So let's think about some different forms of communication, because right now you've got the written through tech, and you've got the verbal, personal. So let's think about some other modes of communication. How else does communication happen? Chris? Oh, nice. That's interesting. I've never heard that one suggested in this before, but that's pretty fascinating. Yeah?
Sign language.
Sign. Nice. I like that one too. More. Yeah?
Letters.
Letters. Excellent. A dying art. Ryan. Braille.
Does that feel like maybe their emotions feel like feeling more like hugging or something?
Yes, although I think what I'd like to do, Melissa, is avoid examples of direct physical personal contact. So let's think about sender-receiver being separate in some way rather than being directly physically. Yeah.
Body language.
Okay, good. Now we're starting to think a little bit outside the, gosh, did I almost say outside the box? I hate cliches. But really, yeah. Outside the circle? Okay. I can work with that. Sydney?
Like what you get from a picture or something with the art.
I was wondering if anybody was going to go to visuals. If you're interested in a career path, one of the most interesting and sometimes lucrative career paths that you can think of is advertising and marketing. And advertisers and marketers, especially online now, understand how the visual will appeal to people in ways that the textual, with just words, cannot. And they're talking about layering meaning, once again. Okay? Multiple layers of meaning in one transfer of information. So if you have an advertisement, for instance, a commercial advertisement on a billboard, in a magazine, or on television, or in a banner ad, you have multiple layers of meaning. The sender and receiver are involved in a very complex sort of interaction. The people who design those banner ads, those magazine ads, are paid large sums of money because they're educated in all the different layers of meaning and how to manipulate them. And what you probably don't understand when you are the receiver is that you are being manipulated in a number of different ways, most of those being implicit, that you don't really understand unless you put your conscious attention to it. And guess what television never wants you to do? Put your conscious attention to anything. Because if so, you might start to unravel some of those implied messages, and you might start to fight against them. So for instance, if you were to see, let me take a rather gross example, any sort of beer or alcohol commercial targeted toward men in which women were depicted very prominently, there is an implied message of sex behind the product. They don't want you thinking about that. They simply want you emotionally reacting to that. The men, of course. The different layers of meaning, once consciously attended to, can help you grasp and control that message. So if you put your conscious, analytical mind to unraveling all these layers of meaning, you can control the message that's being presented. So what we're doing today is taking a look at just some very basic analytical ways in which we can sort of control that. In which you can read Friday Night Lights and say, hey, Bissinger just gave me this message, and I understand that in terms of the thought, explicitly. But he gave it to me in this way, using this language, and furthermore, he put it right next to this other message which adds meaning. And now you control that book.